Once upon a time, in a bustling city, there lived a young woman named Amelia. She lived in a large mansion with her husband, Chinadu. To outsiders, their life looked perfect. They had money, a beautiful home, and were respected in society. People often refer to them as the power couple. But inside, Amelia felt something was wrong. Chinadu was always busy, always leaving the house with one excuse or the other about meetings. At first, she didn't question it. She wanted to believe him. But as the excuses grew, so did her unease. That morning, Chinadu came down in a smart blue suit. He kissed Amelia on the forehead like a loving husband. "Good morning, baby," he said, smiling. "Good morning," she replied, watching him. "You're leaving early again?" "Yes, I have meetings today." "Don't stress yourself. I'll handle it all," he said quickly, brushing off her concern. Amelia smiled faintly and nodded, but deep down her doubts grew stronger. At the sound of a car horn, she knew Dennis, their driver, was outside already. Dennis had worked for Amelia's family for years. He wasn't just a driver, he was loyal. That loyalty began when Amelia's late father, Mr. Henry, saved Dennis's family during their darkest moment. When Dennis was a teenager, his mother had fallen terribly sick. They needed surgery, but Dennis had no money. By chance, he met Mr. Henry at his office that same day when he applied for the driver position. Mr. Henry didn't just listen. He paid the hospital bills in full, made sure Dennis's mother survived, and even paid his younger sister's school fees. Later, he sent Dennis to driving school and gave him a stable job as a family driver. Because of that kindness, Dennis promised himself he would protect the family no matter what. Even after Mr. Henry's death, Dennis stayed, now serving Amelia with the same loyalty he once showed her father. As Dennis drove Chinadu out that morning, Amelia sat by the window, thinking. Chinadu had once included her in every business decision, especially after her father died. But now he told her to rest and not worry. Her father had taught her never to ignore warning signs. He used to say, "Trust people, but confirm. Stewardship is responsibility." Those words echoed in her mind. When Amelia went through some of her late father's old files later that day, she noticed something strange. Some properties listed as not for sale had been recently transferred. She frowned, wondering why Chinadu had never mentioned it. Meanwhile, Dennis kept noticing things too. He often drove Chinadu to places that didn't look like offices. Chinadu sometimes asked him not to tell Madam where they had gone. Dennis said nothing, but he wrote it down in his mind. That same day, Chinadu asked Dennis to stop at a bank on the island. While waiting, Dennis heard him on the phone speaking softly, almost sweetly, words no man should say unless he was talking to his wife. But it wasn't Amelia he was talking to. "Don't worry," Chinadu whispered. "Everything is moving well. Soon I'll have full access to her accounts." Dennis's grip tightened on the steering wheel. He wanted to speak up but kept quiet. It wasn't his place, at least not yet. Back home, Amelia tried to bury herself in work, but her mind wandered. She found a hotel guest card tucked into Chinadu's newspaper. The date on it was only 2 days ago. She stared at it, her chest tightening. Another meeting? Or something more? When Chinadu came back that night, he was cheerful, acting as though everything was normal. He hugged her and laughed through dinner. But Amelia wasn't fooled. Something inside her told her the cracks in their perfect life were about to split wide open. She hardly slept that night. She kept turning in bed, replaying the day in her mind. Her father's ledger, the hotel card, Chinadu's sweet but slippery words. She wanted to push the doubts away, but they clung to her. Morning came with another rush. Chinadu left early again, briefcase in hand, voice filled with his usual charm. "Don't wait up for me, baby," he said, kissing her cheek before stepping into the car. Dennis opened the door for him like always, silent and steady. Amelia stood at the doorway, watching them drive out, a heaviness settling on her chest. She went back inside, determined to distract herself with paperwork, but her thoughts would not leave her alone. As for Dennis, he sat behind the wheel, hands steady, but his mind wandered. Many people saw only a driver in a neat uniform, but there was more to him. He was young, barely 30, tall and handsome, with clear eyes and a quiet presence. He had graduated from the University of Lagos with a first-class degree in economics. Back then, his lecturers told him he had a bright future. But life hadn't been fair. After graduation, he searched for work for almost 2 years. Companies praised his results, but never called back. Some said he had no connection. Others asked for bribes he couldn't pay. While he struggled, his mother fell sick and needed urgent surgery. It was at that desperate moment that fate pushed him toward Mr. Henry. At first, Dennis told himself it was temporary, just until he found something better. But then Mr. Henry died. Amelia was left alone, newly married and suddenly carrying the weight of her father's company. Dennis looked at her and remembered the promise he had once whispered at his mother's hospital bedside, to repay kindness with loyalty. So he stayed. Not because he loved being a driver, but because he couldn't leave her unprotected. Still, Amelia hardly noticed him beyond his role. To her, he was just Dennis, the quiet man who opened doors and carried bags. She didn't see how closely he watched, how much he cared, or how much he knew. Later that week, after dropping Chinadu off at yet another meeting, Dennis returned to the mansion. He parked the car and walked inside to find Amelia in the study, staring at papers with tired eyes. "Madam, are you all right?" he asked carefully. She looked up, startled. "Yes, I'm fine. Thank you, Dennis." But she didn't look fine. Her eyes were red, her shoulders tense. For a moment, Dennis wanted to turn back and keep silent, like always. But something inside him snapped. He couldn't keep watching her suffer in silence while Chinadu played games outside. Before he could stop himself, Dennis hesitated. Then, acting on desperation, he stepped closer and kissed her directly on the lips. Amelia froze, eyes wide with shock. For a heartbeat, she didn't move. Then she shoved him back, trembling with fury. "Dennis!" she shouted. "What on earth do you think you're doing? How dare you?" "I'm sorry, madam," he said quickly, his voice low and urgent. "Sorry?" she snapped. "You kiss me in my own house? You're a driver, for God's sake. Do you want me to report you to my husband? I will disgrace you and have you thrown out this minute." Dennis raised his hands as if to calm her. "Please, madam, listen to me. It isn't what you think. It wasn't disrespect. It was the only way I could make you stop and hear me." Amelia's chest heaved with anger and confusion. "Hear you about what?" Dennis took a deep breath, his voice shaking with urgency. "Madam, I've seen Oga Chinadu. I've driven him to hotels more than once. He is not going for business. He is going with a woman. I wanted to tell you, but you would not believe me. That's why I did what I did. Please forgive me. I needed to get your full attention and interest." Amelia's face went pale. She stepped back, her hands gripping the edge of the desk. "Do you realize what you're saying? That's a terrible accusation." "I know," Dennis said softly, "and I wouldn't say it if it wasn't true." For a long moment, silence filled the room. Amelia stared at him, torn between anger, disbelief, and a fear she could not name. Finally she whispered, "If this is a lie, Dennis, I swear I will end your life here." "It's not a lie, madam," he said firmly. "I'm ready to show you proof." The air between them was heavy. Amelia's world was beginning to tilt, and for the first time, she saw Dennis not just as a driver, but as a man who knew more than she realized. Amelia's hands trembled slightly as she held the edge of the desk. Dennis's words kept ringing in her ears. "I've seen Oga Chinadu. He's with another woman." Her anger returned in waves. "Dennis, you didn't need to kiss me to say all this. That was wrong, very wrong." Dennis bowed his head. "I know, madam. I am sorry. I don't even know what I was thinking. Maybe I wasn't thinking at all. I only wanted you to be safe. That is the truth." Her eyes narrowed. "Safe? What do you mean safe?" He hesitated, then spoke quietly, choosing each word carefully. "Madam, it's not just about him cheating. I think Oga is planning something worse. I don't know everything, but I've overheard things. He talks about your father's businesses, about accounts. The way he hides things from you, it's not right. I can't tell how far it will go, but I knew I couldn't sit back and watch." Amelia's heart skipped. She stared at Dennis, trying to read if he was lying. His eyes looked sincere, but it was too much to take in. "Dennis," she said coldly, "you're crossing dangerous lines. You should not speak about my husband like this without solid proof." "I do have some proof," Dennis replied quickly. "But it's not enough yet. I've seen too many things I can't ignore. Please, madam, just be careful." She shook her head, her voice low. "Even if what you say is true, You had no right to touch me. You humiliated me. Don't you understand? Dennis's shoulders slumped. I understand. I regret it. I wasn't thinking clearly. I only wanted you to listen before it was too late. Forgive me, madam. The silence stretched. Amelia turned away, pressing her palm against her forehead. Every part of her wanted to dismiss him entirely, but her chest felt heavy. Something about his tone, the urgency, refused to leave her heart. Finally, she waved her hand. Go, Dennis, just go. I don't want to hear more. Yes, madam, he said softly and walked out of the study. When the door closed, Amelia sank into the chair. Her heart was pounding. She told herself Dennis had crossed the line, that he had no business in her private life. Yet the image of the hotel card in her bag and the strange way Chinedu had been avoiding board meetings made her chest tighten. Could Dennis be telling the truth? She wondered. Or was this just a mad story from someone overstepping his place? She buried her face in her hands. Nothing felt steady anymore. The sound of the gates opening echoed through the compound. Amelia quickly composed herself, fixing her face into calmness. Chinedu walked in, smiling, his cologne filling the room before his voice did. Baby, he said warmly, dropping his briefcase and pulling her into an embrace. I missed you today. Amelia stiffened slightly, but he didn't notice. How was your day? He asked, kissing her cheek. Fine, she said quietly. He smiled, his eyes soft, his tone sweet. You worry too much, my love. You should have joined me at the new suppliers meeting. But don't worry, I handled everything. You can relax. He held her hand as if he had nothing to hide. His charm was smooth, his laughter easy, but Amelia's mind was far from calm. Behind her forced smile, Dennis's warning replayed in her head. It's not just cheating. He's planning something worse. And though she dismissed Dennis earlier, Amelia felt a seed of fear taking root in her heart. The next morning, the dining table was neatly set with toast, fried eggs, and a steaming pot of tea. Amelia sat quietly, her spoon tracing circles around her cup. Chinedu came down dressed sharply in a grey suit. He kissed her cheek and sat opposite her, smiling as if the world belonged to him. Baby, he began in a light tone, I've been thinking. You've been looking tired lately. All these meetings, reports, numbers, they're too much for you. I don't want you stressing yourself. Amelia looked up slowly. Chinedu, I'm fine. I should be part of the meetings. You know that's how Daddy raised me. He chuckled, shaking his head. No, Amelia. Times have changed. Let me handle things. You should focus on the home, enjoy life. Trust me, I can take care of everything. Her jaw tightened. She wanted to argue, but she swallowed her words. Later that day, when Chinedu had left for work, Dennis met her in the hallway. He spoke carefully, his eyes serious. Madam, he said, please forgive me for how I acted the other day. But I need to tell you again, Oga Chinedu is selling some of your father's properties. I've seen the documents in his briefcase. Amelia's chest tightened. Are you sure, Dennis? Yes, madam. That's why he doesn't want you at the meetings. He wants to control everything. She pressed her lips together. Then I need proof, solid proof. That evening, Amelia sat alone in her father's study, flipping through the old black ledger he used to keep. Her father had been a wise man, always a step ahead. On one of the back pages, she noticed a small note in his handwriting. Private accounts and shares in Amelia's name. Confidential. Her eyes widened. She remembered now. Years ago, her father had told her about certain investments he kept hidden for her safety. She had almost forgotten. An idea began to form in her mind. If Chinedu is greedy, I can use this to test him. I will bait him. If he reacts, I'll know the truth. The next morning, Amelia sat in the living room with her phone, pretending to be speaking to her late father's old accountant. She raised her voice slightly on purpose. Yes, she said. Those private accounts and shares Daddy left in my name. Yes, I still have the documents. I just need to decide what to do with them. From the corner of her eye, she saw Chinedu freeze at the staircase. He had been coming down with his tie in his hand, but now he stopped completely. His eyes sharpened, hungry, like a man who had just smelled fresh meat. Amelia hung up the call casually, as if nothing had happened. But when she turned to him, his face carried a bright smile. My love, he said warmly, stepping closer. Private accounts? Shares? You've never mentioned those to me before. Amelia's heart pounded, but she forced a calm smile. Oh, I must have forgotten. Chinedu's smile grew wider, but in his eyes Amelia saw the glint of greed she had been waiting for. Later that afternoon, Amelia lay in the living room pretending to sleep. The sun made a bright square on the floor. Her heart beat a little faster than usual, but she kept still. She wanted to catch Chinedu off guard, to hear what he would say after he learned about the private accounts. Her chance came sooner than she expected. Chinedu walked in smiling, speaking into his phone, his voice low and full of ease. He thought no one was listening. When he saw her sleeping on the sofa, he stepped out to the balcony just to be safe. He was sure she couldn't hear him now, but he was wrong. Yes, it's true, he said. She told me today. 5 million in that account, and more shares, hidden shares. You know what that means? Amelia froze. She moved no more than a breath. Her mind tried to catch up with her ears. We take everything. Chinedu went on, his voice soft but sharp. We start the transfer. We drain the account slowly so it won't raise an alarm. Then we move the shares to the shell company. By the time she notices, we'll be gone. He laughed quietly. Amelia felt the laugh like a punch in the chest. From the phone, a voice answered, warm, greedy, Belinda. Amelia could not hear Belinda clearly. The walls muffled the other side, but Chinedu's side said enough. Belinda, trust me on this. You know I love you. Don't worry. I'll get it done this week. The bank officer knows me. There was a low pause. Then Chinedu's tone dropped further. And if she causes trouble? Amelia's skin prickled. He laughed again, meaner this time. If she causes trouble, we make it look like an accident. You know what they believe. Heart attack, a slip in the pool. Believe me, once she's gone, the lawyer signs the papers easily. Everything goes to me, and we live our dream life. Amelia's hand tightened on the file until the paper creased. The word accident floated in her head like a dark black bird. She slid back against the sofa. The world narrowed to the sound of his voice and the slow tick of the wall clock. Her vision blurred. For a second the room swam and she thought she might faint. She steadied herself with both hands on the arm of the sofa. Her face was white and her knees felt weak. She breathed in slowly, deep. A cold sweat broke along her spine. She wanted to scream, to run out and throw the phone to the floor, to grab him and ask him to explain, but panic would not help. She needed proof, solid proof. Otherwise, people would think she imagined things, or worse, they would think she'd made it up. Chinedu continued talking, unaware. You'll see. By next month we'll be free. That house, the cars, the money, yours. All yours if... He paused, and Amelia heard a quiet voice on the line, Belinda's soft whisper. Chinedu answered, almost tender. Yes, I won't fail you. The hush broke. Chinedu said something else. A small joke, a promise to buy her a new dress, a plan to leave the country. Then he folded his phone and walked toward the stairs. Amelia stayed still, with her eyes closed, until his footsteps faded. Her mind felt numb, but she forced herself up. She had to look calm. If he suspected she had hurt him, everything would be worse. His audacity still shocked her. He must think I am the biggest fool on planet Earth, she thought to herself. She went to the study where the old ledger lay. Her hands shook as she sat down. The page with her father's notes stared at her. Private accounts and shares in Amelia's name. Confidential. She touched the ink like a map to the truth. Proof, she whispered to the empty room. I need proof. For a moment she thought of calling the police. But then the cold thought came back. Without proof, the police might laugh. They could arrest Dennis, or accuse him of lying. Chinedu had friends in banks and courts. He could make the story vanish. No, she had to beat him at his own game. A plan began to form, slow and careful. She would pretend she did not hear. She would act normal in front of Chinedu. She would let him think he had won. But she would also move quietly to gather the evidence, bank records, transfer notices, messages, someone who would testify. She would need help she could trust. Dennis might be reckless, but he was loyal. Amelia thought of him, of his face the day he kissed her, of his promise to keep her safe. Perhaps he could be the one to watch and record. She breathed again and felt a small, cold strength enter her chest. Fear was there, thick and heavy, but underneath it something else stirred. The memory of her father's calm voice, telling her to check the numbers, to be the steward of what he left. Trust people, but confirm. She stood and smoothed her dress. In the hallway she passed a mirror and saw a woman whose eyes were tired but clear. She whispered to herself, "You won't die quietly. You will fight." Amelia moved like someone learning to walk across a tightrope. Quiet, careful. Every step had to count. She waited until Chinadu was out of reach. Then she called Dennis to come to the study. When he arrived, he found her sitting upright, face set, a small file open on the desk. "Madam," he asked softly, sensing the change. She looked at him steadily. "Dennis, I heard everything. He plans to take the accounts. He spoke about making it look like an accident. What baffles me most is how he is plotting to kill me while living under the same roof with me. He is a monster." Dennis's face changed. For a beat he was only a man. Then he became the driver who kept promises. "Madam, what do you want me to do?" he asked. She gave him a slow, measured answer. "You will watch him, Dennis. You will follow him when he leaves. You will record his visits, find anything, documents, messages, bank names. Bring everything to me, and do not tell anyone else, not yet." Dennis nodded, solemn. "Yes, madam. I will watch him." Amelia felt a strange mix of fear and relief. She was not safe yet, not by far, but now she had a plan and someone who would not betray her. That small truth steadied her. She closed the ledger and placed it carefully in a drawer. Then she looked at Dennis and said, "One more thing. Keep your eyes open. If he moves too fast, or if he becomes suspicious, tell me immediately." Dennis swallowed and nodded. "I will, madam." Outside, the wind pushed at the palm leaves. Inside, a woman whose life had been calm until only days ago, now prepared for a battle she had not asked for. She would play the game they wanted to play, but she would play it on her own terms. She would not be made into an accident. Amelia sat in the study long after Dennis left. The words she had overheard from Chinadu's call kept circling her mind like vultures. "If she dies, everything is mine." Her hands shook as she remembered it. She whispered to herself, "I must see with my own eyes." 2 days later, Dennis parked a few streets away from a tall block of apartments on the island. They had followed Chinadu discreetly and saw him drop Belinda there more than once. "Are you sure about this, madam?" Dennis asked quietly as they sat in the car. Amelia straightened her scarf. "Yes, I need to see it with my own eyes." They waited until Belinda stepped out, stylish in a red dress carrying a small handbag. She locked the door and walked off with quick steps, heels clicking against the pavement. "Now," Amelia whispered. Dennis nodded. They crossed the street, his tall figure shielding her slightly. He used a thin piece of wire to open the lock, quick, practiced, silent. Within minutes, the door clicked open. Amelia's heart hammered as they slipped inside. The apartment was modern and neat. The sweet scent of perfume lingered in the air. On the dresser, Amelia's eyes fell on something that made her legs weaken, a gold necklace. Her fingers trembled as she picked it up. This is the exact necklace Chinadu gave me for our wedding anniversary." Beside it lay a wristwatch. Her breath caught. "And this is the watch he gave me on my birthday." Dennis stepped closer. "Madam." Her chest tightened as her eyes swept the room. She found handbags, shoes, and even duplicate bracelets. Every piece was a mirror of the gifts Chinadu had once placed in her hand with loving words. Gifts she thought meant devotion, here, exposed as lies. Amelia sank onto the edge of the bed, tears sliding down her face. "I was blind. All along I was blind." Her voice shook as she began to speak, not to Dennis, but to herself. "I met Chinadu at a dinner my father hosted. He was charming, bold, the kind of man who made you feel seen. We didn't date long before he proposed. Daddy liked him, and I thought I was lucky. Even when he started acting distant after the wedding, I told myself it was stress. I never thought it could be this." She covered her face with her hands. "I gave him everything. My trust, my heart, and he was planning my death." Dennis crouched beside her, his voice steady but gentle. "Madam, don't blame yourself. Sometimes love covers the cracks. Those outside see the truth more clearly. That is why your father placed me here. He knew loyalty is not just about driving a car. It is about watching when others are blind. Amelia looked at him, her eyes wet but sharp. You were right, Dennis. And I will never forget it. Since he thinks I am a fool, I will show him what a fool is capable of. They gathered a few pieces, photographs, jewelry, receipts, as quiet proof. Then Dennis locked the apartment door behind them. As they walked back to the car, Amelia's face was pale but firm. She had seen enough to crush her illusions. Dennis, she said softly as she slid into the car, I will not let him destroy me. If he thinks I am weak, let him keep thinking so. But now I know the truth. Dennis started the engine, his voice steady. Yes, madam. Now we plan carefully. And when the time comes, the truth will speak for itself. The car hummed softly as Dennis drove them back toward the mansion. The city lights flickered past, blurred by Amelia's tears. She sat silently at first, staring out of the window, but her chest heaved as memories rushed in. My father trusted him, she whispered suddenly, her voice breaking. Daddy trusted Chinadu. He believed he was the right man for me, the one who would take care of me when he was gone. Now I see. I see that I failed Daddy. I let him down as a daughter, and as a wife I have been living with a stranger. Her hands covered her face. The sobs came harder now, deep and raw. Dennis gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. He had never seen her like this, so broken, so small. Madam, please don't blame yourself, he said softly. Your father's trust was not misplaced. It is not your fault Chinadu chose wickedness. Sometimes evil hides behind a sweet smile, and even wise men cannot see it at first. Amelia lowered her hands, her eyes red and swollen. But I was blind. I loved him, and I refused to see the signs. Dennis hesitated, then spoke with quiet courage. Love blinds the heart, madam. It's not weakness, it's human. That is why those outside sometimes see the cracks before you do. I saw things, but you only saw your husband. His words comforted her, though they cut deeply. She wiped her eyes with trembling fingers. I feel betrayed. Not just as a wife, but as my father's daughter. He left me a legacy, and now it is in danger. Dennis's chest tightened. For a fleeting moment he felt something stir inside him, something he had not dared to name. Maybe he had always admired her strength, her kindness, the way she carried her father's memory with grace. Maybe that was why he had kissed her that day without thinking, because his heart had spoken before his mind could stop it. But as quickly as the thought came, he pushed it away. No, he told himself. She is Madame Amelia, the only daughter of a great man. I am only her driver. Nothing more. The silence stretched between them, heavy but alive. Finally, Amelia drew a long, steady breath. Her voice grew firmer, steadier. Dennis, I will not let Chinadu destroy what my father built. He can betray me, but he will not bury my father's name. I swear I will protect his legacy at all costs. Dennis glanced at her through the rearview mirror. Her face was still wet with tears, but there was steel in her eyes now. He nodded slowly. And I will stand by you, madam, whatever it takes. The car rolled through the night toward the mansion. Inside, grief and anger had given birth to something stronger, resolve. Amelia was no longer just a wife who had been wronged. She was a daughter determined to fight for her father's name, and now she had someone by her side. The night Amelia made her vow in the car, she did not sleep. She lay awake on her side of the bed, staring at the ceiling while Chinadu snored softly beside her. Her mind was already working on a plan. She needed proof, not guesses, not suspicions, but words that no one could deny. By morning, she had her trap ready. After breakfast, Amelia sat across from Chinadu at the dining table. She looked calm, her face carefully arranged. Chinadu, she said softly, I've been thinking about Daddy's private accounts. Maybe I should let you handle them. You know business better than me. Chinadu paused mid-bite, his eyes flashing with surprise before he quickly covered it with a warm smile. My love, that's very wise. I've always said you worry too much. Leave these things to me. Amelia forced a small smile. Yes, I'll give you the details later. Hidden in her pocket was a small recorder Dennis had given her that morning. She had told Dennis her plan in hushed words. He must believe he has won. When he speaks freely, I will have the evidence. Dennis had nodded firmly, promising to stay close. Later that evening, Amelia stepped out of the bedroom, saying she wanted to rest in the garden. In truth, she slipped quietly into the corridor that overlooked the study. Chinadu was inside, phone pressed to his ear, his voice low and playful. The recorder in her pocket was already running. "Yes, Belinda, it's true," he said with a chuckle. "She's finally giving me the account details. The fool thinks I love her." Amelia's chest tightened, but she kept still. "Yes, baby. Soon all the money will be ours. $5 million. The shares, too. We'll move everything slowly. She won't even notice until it's gone." There was a pause as Belinda's faint voice murmured something. Chinadu laughed. "3 children. Of course. We'll have as many as you want. You're the one I love, not her. You know that." Another pause. Then Chinadu's voice dropped, sharp but amused. "Love her? No, nah. I told you this before now. I only married Amelia because she's a rich kid. Ignorant, unsuspecting, easy to manipulate. She was just a ticket into her father's empire." Amelia's hand gripped the banister so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her body shook, but she didn't move. She needed every word. Chinadu laughed again, his tone light and careless. "Yes, my darling Belinda. Once the money is in my hands, we disappear. Let her cry, let her beg, I don't care. She'll be nothing." Amelia waited until he ended the call. She stayed quiet, her heart racing. When she was sure he was gone, she slipped back to her room and closed the door softly. She pulled out the recorder, stopped it, and stared at it in her trembling hand. Every word was there. Proof. Solid proof. Tears filled her eyes, but this time they weren't only from pain. They were from relief, from a quiet strength rising inside her. For the first time, she wasn't just a victim. She held the weapon that could bring him down. When Dennis came later to check on her, she held up the recorder. "I have it," she said firmly. "Everything he is, everything he has planned. Now, Dennis, it's time to end this." Dennis bowed his head slightly, his voice steady. "Yes, madam, now we have the truth." Amelia woke the next morning with a clear mind. She had cried enough. Now it was time to act. The recorder lay on her bedside table. Every word Chinadu had said was trapped inside it like poison in a bottle. She clutched it tightly, whispering to herself, "Today it ends." Dennis was waiting in the hallway. His voice was steady when he said, "The officers are ready, madam. Just give the word." She nodded. "Let him think everything is normal. Then we strike." By afternoon, Chinadu sat in his study with papers spread out across the desk. His phone buzzed non-stop as he spoke to his bank contact, arranging the transfer. His face glowed with excitement, his hands rubbing together as if he already felt the money in his grip. "Once the transfer is done, send the confirmation," he said sharply into the phone. "Yes, 5 million. Shares too. No delays." At that moment, Amelia stepped into the room. She held herself tall, calm, her eyes steady. "My love," Chinadu said with a wide smile, hiding the papers quickly. "You came at the right time. I was just finishing some work for us." Amelia's lips curved into a faint smile. "Really? Work for us?" "Yes, of course," he said, rising to kiss her hand. "Everything I do is for you, Amelia." She stepped back, her hand slipping away. "Save it." He frowned. "What do you mean?" Amelia pulled out the recorder, pressed play, and set it on the desk. Chinadu's own voice filled the room. "I only married Amelia because she's a rich kid, ignorant, unsuspecting, easy to manipulate. Once the money is in my hands, we disappear." The color drained from Chinadu's face. His mouth opened, then closed. Amelia's eyes blazed with pain and fury. "You see, Chinadu, I don't need your sweet lies anymore. I have the truth. Every word." He stammered. "Amelia, it's not what you think. I was only pretending for—" "Save it for the judge. You think I'm a fool. That is why you were so confident saying things in the house. But I thank God, because if you had acted otherwise, I wouldn't have known I married the devil," she cut in coldly. Before Chinadu could move, the door burst open. 4 uniformed officers stormed into the study, Dennis right behind them. "Mr. Chinadu," the lead officer said firmly, "you are under arrest for fraud, theft, and intent to murder." "What?" Chinadu shouted, his face twisting with shock. "No, this is a mistake. Amelia, tell them I would never—" Amelia stood tall, tears glistening in her eyes, but her voice firm. "You planned it all, Chinadu. You betrayed my father, my marriage, and my trust. You planned to kill me. Now face the consequences." The officers handcuffed him as he struggled. "Amelia, please, I can explain. Don't do this to me." She turned away, her heart heavy but resolute. "You did this to yourself." The officers dragged him out as he kept shouting her name, his voice fading down the hallway. The house fell quiet again. Amelia stood in the study, staring at the empty chair where Chinadu had been. Dennis stepped forward, his expression calm but protective. "It's over now, madam," he said softly. Amelia let out a shaky breath. "No, Dennis, this is just the beginning. My father's legacy will not be buried by a liar and a thief. I will rebuild what he tried to destroy." Dennis bowed his head respectfully. "And I will stand with you." For the first time in weeks, Amelia felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She was wounded, yes, but no longer powerless. She had survived betrayal. She had chosen to fight back. And with proof in her hands and loyalty by her side, she knew she would never be deceived so easily again. The weeks that followed felt like a storm passing. Court hearings filled the newspapers. Chinadu's smiling face was no longer on glossy magazine covers but on the evening news shown in handcuffs. The evidence Amelia presented, the recordings, the documents Dennis had helped her gather, was too strong to deny. The judge's voice was firm as the gavel came down. "Chinadu, you are hereby sentenced for fraud, theft, and conspiracy to commit murder." Amelia sat quietly in the courtroom, her hands folded in her lap. She did not smile, she did not cry. She only breathed a long, steady sigh of relief. The man who once promised her love now faced the punishment his actions deserved. Soon after, the divorce papers were finalized. Amelia's name was cleared, her accounts secured, her properties restored. She walked out of the courthouse one afternoon with Dennis by her side. The air felt lighter, as if the weight pressing on her chest for years had finally lifted. She whispered to herself, "I am free." Dennis glanced at her from a respectful distance. He didn't speak, but in his eyes there was quiet pride. Back at the company, Amelia called a small meeting with her board. She stood tall in her father's old office, the place that once felt too big for her. Now she carried herself with calm authority. "There will be changes," she said firmly. "From this day, transparency will be our rule. Loyalty will be honored." She turned to Dennis, who stood awkwardly near the door in his driver's uniform. "Dennis," she said softly, "you have stood by me when no one else did. You saw the truth before I could, and you risked everything to protect me. From today, you are no longer just my driver. You will serve as my personal aide here in the company." Dennis blinked in surprise. "Madam, me? But He paused, searching for words. "I am not worthy." Amelia gave a faint, knowing smile. "You are more than worthy. My father trusted you, and I trust you. That is enough." Applause filled the room as Dennis bowed his head, humbled. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, Amelia began to heal. The nights were still lonely and the memories still stung, but she refused to be defined by betrayal. Instead, she threw herself into work. She met with old partners her father had trusted. She revived projects that had been abandoned. She protected the shares and accounts as if they were her own children. Every time she signed a document or made a decision, she whispered silently to her late father, "I will not fail you." She was no longer just the betrayed wife of Chinadu. She was Amelia Henry, daughter of a man who built an empire, and she was now strong enough to defend it. That night, as she stood by the balcony of her mansion, the wind brushing against her face, Dennis came to inform her about the next day's schedule. She turned to him with calm eyes. "Dennis," she said, "we have been through fire and storm, but from now on we walk forward. Together." He nodded, his voice steady but filled with quiet emotion. "Yes, madam." The city lights stretched before them, bright and endless. For Amelia, it was not just the end of betrayal, it was the start of a new chapter, one she would write with her own strength. Weeks passed, and the air around Amelia began to change. The shadows of betrayal no longer followed her every step. Instead, she poured her energy into something bigger than herself, something her father would have been proud of. She launched the Henry Foundation, a charity in her father's name. Its purpose was simple but powerful, to support widows, orphans, and struggling students. The first seed money came from her restored accounts, but Amelia called it an investment in people. At the opening ceremony, she stood on stage in a plain navy dress, speaking from her heart. My father taught me that wealth is not about what we keep, but what we give. Today we carry his vision forward. This foundation is not just about money, it's about hope. The applause that followed was warm and genuine. For the first time in months, Amelia smiled without forcing it. Through it all, Dennis never left her side. He was no longer just the man holding car keys at the gate. He became her aide, her confidant, the one she leaned on when the weight of decisions pressed down. He organized meetings, screened phone calls, and kept records with sharp attention to detail. Board members who once overlooked him now respected him. He carried himself quietly, never seeking praise, but his presence steadied Amelia in ways she didn't admit out loud. One evening, after a long day at the office, Amelia and Dennis sat in the study going over documents. She looked at him for a long moment, noticing how focused he was, how loyal he had remained when others had failed her. Dennis, she said softly. He looked up immediately. Yes, madam? She shook her head gently. No, don't call me madam anymore. Call me Amelia. He blinked, surprised. Amelia? Yes, she said with a small smile. That's my name, and I want you to use it. Something warm stirred between them. Dennis felt his chest tighten, but he quickly bowed his head. Yes, Amelia. Her heart fluttered at the sound. She didn't say more, but inside a spark flickered, one she wasn't ready to act on yet. She would wait, watch, and see how things would unfold. Meanwhile, behind prison walls, Chinedu sat on a metal bench, head in his hands. The door creaked open, and Belinda walked in, her heels clicking against the concrete floor. For a moment, his face lit up. Belinda, you came, he said, reaching for her hand. But she pulled back coldly. Don't get excited. I didn't come for love. I came to tell you it's over. What? His eyes widened. You have nothing now, she said flatly. No money, no power. You can't give me the life I want. I won't waste my time waiting for you. I have my life to live. Chinedu's throat went dry. Belinda, after everything I did for you? She laughed bitterly. No, Chinedu. After everything you destroyed for me. Goodbye. She turned and walked away, her perfume lingering only a moment before the door slammed shut. Chinedu sat frozen, the truth crashing over him. He had betrayed a good woman, thrown away trust. And for what? A mistress who left him the moment he had nothing. Tears stung his eyes as he whispered to himself, I was the fool all along. That night, Amelia stood on her balcony, the wind lifting her hair as she looked over the lights of Lagos. The city stretched endlessly, alive with noise and motion. Her heart still carried scars, but it also carried strength. Inside, Dennis finished arranging her files for the next day. Then he walked out, heading to the car parked at the gate, ever ready to serve. Amelia placed her hand on the railing, whispering to the night, Daddy, I kept my promise. I will protect what you left. Her eyes softened as she thought of Dennis. Once just a driver, now the one person she could trust without doubt. Perhaps more than trust. Below, the car engine started. Dennis drove slowly out of the gate, the headlights glowing against the night. Amelia watched from above, her most trusted ally carrying her forward into a future she was no longer afraid to face. She breathed deeply, her resolve unshakable. The past was behind her. The future was hers to write.